Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We seem to have a very large audience this evening. I can't see who they are, not at the moment at least, but it is my pleasure and honor to introduce my very good friend and relative, may I say, Mr. Danny Seliger. Danny, as he always says, is not a rabbi, but he has an extremely important job in our community. He has been a very important man for decades. He is responsible in his daytime job as Director of Administration, Canary Wharf Management. In other words, he has a responsibility for the smooth running of the whole Canary Wharf complex. And he is very well known and very much loved there. But that he really only does as a sideline. He does that in his spare time, as it were. The truth is that Danny is a one-man chesed machine, kindness machine. He recently won a very prestigious award, a director of the Canary Wharf. I'm quoting from a newspaper headline: Director of Canary Wharf wins Top Planned Jewish Care Award. Danny Seliger, Director and Administration of Canary Wharf Management, has been presented with the prestigious Top Planned Group Business Luncheon Award in recognition of his commitment and dedication to communal life. There were 550 people at that dinner, and a champion of Jewish life, they say, he is in East London for almost 25 years. Danny has led the creation of a vibrant Jewish community in Canary Wharf. Professionals meet over kosher food, minyanim, and lunch and learn sessions. Alongside this, Danny has developed a program of intergenerational activities and events. Jewish Care clients look forward to regular visits, joining Danny's group for lunch and the Sukkah, Hanukkah celebrations, and other festivals. His work extends further to delivering parcels to vulnerable people across the community. That is Danny best known. In fact, he very recently, in November last year, was invited by Prince Philip to Buckingham Palace. I have the invitation in front of me. He was invited in recognition and acknowledgement for the wonderful work he does on behalf of our community. And not everybody knows, it's just part of his chesed. He runs the Hachnosus Orchim project of monks. That is the Golders Green Beis HaMedrash, the wonderful shul in Golders Green. He runs the hospitality department where people from all over the world can send in emails to him telling them that they're coming to London for Shabbos, and he will take the responsibility of finding them places to stay and places to eat. This is the Danny Seliger which we all know and all love. And then, 9 days after Purim last year, his world was turned topsy-turvy. He caught COVID, Corona. At that time, none of us knew what it was. None of us knew the implications, but he was one of the first in the community to catch it. And he caught it badly. And for 13 weeks, Danny was in the Royal Free Hospital. 6 of those weeks he was intensive care in the ICU unit. I will not say any more. I think that I would like to hand you over now to Mr. Danny Seliger, who will share with us the traumatic experiences which happened to him, his wife, his family, his children, and to all of the community who joined in with him. Danny, over to you.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Grunfeld. You only mentioned Danny, but you don't mention Rabbi Grunfeld. We're always in awe of what you've been achieving over the years. I still remember visiting you in your home when you were in Kollel in Gateshead, And looking back now, what you've achieved with your team, with Rabbi Herman and the whole group, is just amazing. As you know, our daughter worked for you for 3 years, Simcha Bella, and she was also always in awe of what your organization stood for and what you achieved. So first of all, I want to wish you all Hatzlocha Rabbah, and you should all go Michael El Choyel. Okay, it is very humbling and emotional for me to address you all. Aside from being in business, as Rabbi Grunfeld mentioned, and working for Canary Wharf Group for the past 30 plus years, most recently as Director of Administration, also being involved in community affairs for at least that amount of time, I'm now, thank God, a COVID survivor. My brother Eli, who is 14 younger than I was admitted to the Royal Free Hospital within an hour of my arrival there. Thank God, both of us are here to tell the tale. Although the road was and still is rocky, within 36 hours of our arrival in hospital, we were both ventilated in the ICU. I was on the ventilator for 5 weeks, and Ellie was on the ventilator for 9 weeks. I was in hospital for a total of 13 weeks, of which 6 were in ICU. My brother Eli was in hospital for a total of 22 weeks. Both of us were unconscious over Pesach. I want to publicly thank all those who davened and continue praying for us. I must make special mention of Dayan Ehrentreu, who should have a refuah shalema, and his Rebbitzin and Rabbi Greenberg, who were a pillar of strength to Chani and Leah, my sister-in-law, whilst Eli and I were lying in the hospital unconscious. Lastly, my dear wife Chani and children and their spouses, and Leah and her children. The first nace, the first miracle, was that Hashem made Chani and I meet in Israel 38 years ago, despite the fact that we lived in different ends of the world. Chani in Montreal, Canada, and me in Johannesburg, South Africa. I'm very grateful to my parents-in-law for having raised such a special daughter. My mother-in-law should have arichas yomim and a long life and be gesund. Now I'm the recipient of Chani's intensive care. She was actually an intensive care nurse. She does not stop worrying about and caring for me and preempting all my needs with such patience and understanding. Hashem should grant her koach and gesund to continue all her wonderful work at 120 until 120. We really felt the immense power of prayer. From experience, I know that the recital of Tehillim, Psalms, does not always give the desired outcome, but it never goes to waste. It is mind-boggling how many Tehillim prayers have been said over the last 9 months on our behalf. Although for the first couple of months, we were not even aware of what was going on and about how much concern there was for both of us. I hear that when my sister-in-law Leah was called to the hospital, as Ellie was in dire straits, she phoned Chani to ask everyone to storm the heavens. Immediately, our children organized a conference call all around the world. Within the next few hours, there were about 1,200 calls, and the whole Tehillim was said twice over in unison. Thank God, Ellie improved and is now home. Ellie and I cannot begin to fathom the worries that our wives and families had, yomam v'layla, day and night. The time differences between Israel, North America, and London was also not easy. Ellie and I were away from home, not for one, but for 2 Yomim Tovim, the 2 Jewish holidays, which were Pesach and Shavuot. On Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Sukkot, I said the blessing of Shehecheyonu, God has kept us alive, with even more kavona, in other words, with even more concentration. I would like to speak on some of the Nisim Geluyim, the open miracles that I personally experienced. Firstly, the Hatzalah member whose child received a text message to daven for my brother Eli. The text did not contain his family name, just his Hebrew name. The name rang a bell in the Hatzolah member's mind and as a common Emmanuel Seliger name. He called Chani and asked if Danny was okay, to which she said no. Immediately offered to come to check me out, casually asking, Danny's name is Elchonan Shimon, right? To which she said, no, that's Eli, but check him out anyway. He sent me straight away to hospital. He then went to check Eli out and subsequently sent him to hospital. Both of us arriving in the Royal Free Casualty within an hour of each other. I shuddered to think what would have happened had Hatzolah not come that Thursday night. I cannot explain how difficult it was for me to travel in the ambulance alone without my wife being able to accompany me into A&E due to stringent COVID laws. I had no idea when I would be able to reunite with my family once again. The feelings of loneliness and desperation just cannot be described. After waking me up, gradually I could not move my arms. I couldn't move my arms. I couldn't move my legs at all. I could not hold a cup or a phone or walk for weeks. I was very lonely, vulnerable, and helpless. I actually asked the staff to remove the clock on the wall as I could not bear watching the time moving by so slowly. I had to be hoisted into a chair as my body would not carry me. I asked the physiotherapist how long would it take until I would be able to walk again. He responded to my frustration, how long is a piece of string? In the Royal Free, the medical staff were excellent. I was very fortunate that Dr. Benny Schreiber admitted me and was very helpful to Chani all along. I also want to thank all those people who are currently helping me to smoothen my road to complete recovery. In the morning, I say brochas, blessings, which relate to some of the nisim, the miracles, which happened to me with extra kavona, with extra concentration. The brocha of Asher Yotzar, the blessing, God who has fashioned man, with which one says after relieving oneself during the day, speaks about all the different openings and cavities in the body. And we must be grateful if none of them are ruptured or blocked. Believe me, I was very happy when all my internal systems were working properly again. We take everything so for granted. It is only when Hashem takes it away from us that we realize the immense amount of chesed, kindness, that Hashem does for us every second of the day. The next bracha, blessing, is Elokai neshama shenosato bi tahoro hi. God, the soul that you placed within me is pure. At the end of the bracha, we thank Hashem for restoring the souls to the bodies of the dead. This is an expression of gratitude to God for restoring our vitality in the morning and for maintaining us in life and health. I used to go to the gym 2-3 times a week. I went hospital visiting. Little did I know that suddenly, when my systems were not working properly, my whole life as I knew it came to a complete halt. I still have not been able to go to work and certainly not to the gym. I'm, thank God, very slowly recovering, but still have a way to go. This shows how clearly we are in Hashem's hands. Following on, another one of the brachas are, Asher nosan lasech vino lahavchin ben yom uvein loilo. Hashem gave the heart to distinguish between day and night. And then there's another bracha saying, Pokeach Ivrim, the one who gives sight to the blind, was also very relevant to me. In ICU, I was not aware of the difference between day and night. This, thank God, changed when I was transferred to the ward. As a reward for being able to sit in a chair for a painful 45 minutes, 2 physios offered to take me to the hospital entrance outside. This to me was amazing, as I smelled fresh air and saw some colored flowers for the first time in 9 weeks. What a machaya that was. The brocha of Malbish Arumim, who clothes the naked. For weeks on end, I was dressed in impersonal hospital attire. By the time I left the Royal Free, I was wearing and putting on my own clothes. The brocha of Matir Asurim, who releases the bound. The day I was transferred out of ICU was one of the latest Shabbosim of the years. I was transported in the same bed of ICU to a clinical-looking isolation ward. My meager belongings were dumped on the side, and they did not even show me where the call bell was, in case I needed it. Until someone came to check me on me that evening, I felt as if I was in a prison cell. Each night, when trying to go to sleep, I heard a significant amount of noise outside of my room. I only realized weeks later, when I was allowed out of isolation, that actually my room was near the nurse's station. Zokev Kefufim, who straightens the bent. I remember at the beginning, the physios even had to help me sit up on the side of the bed. I was so weak. A couple of weeks later, they helped me get out of bed, and only 2 months later could I get out of the bed myself. That was a major achievement. We take many things for granted. We think that we run our own lives. Over the past months, Hashem has shown us that we are actually helpless on our own. Many patients and people throughout the world were left to suffer in their beds and were denied sufficient medical assistance. I thank Hashem, she'osoli kol tzorki. He took care of all of my needs. He reserved place for me in the ICU and sent the right medical staff to be at my side at the right time and attend to me at the right place. Hamechin mitzadei gover, Hashem who establishes the footsteps of man. I left the Royal Free in a wheelchair, and it was a miracle that I came out of rehab walking on my own. I had to learn to climb stairs again, which is still very painful. The author of The Impact of As Long as I Live, Aaron Margalit, writes, more and more people are discovering that challenges are like stairs. It is up to us to decide whether to use them to ascend or descend. When I came home, I actually felt like displaying a menorah, a Chanukiah, and making the brocha, the blessing which we say on Chanukah, She'osa Nisim, that God made miracles. We think of our tefillin when we say Oter Yisrael B'Sifuro, who crowns Israel with splendor. For the first time since my bar mitzvah, I did not lay tefillin for weeks. When I first came home, my son Ari helped me daily as I could not raise my arm sufficiently alone. Thank God I can now put on tefillin by myself. Talking about tefillin, it reminds me of the story of my father, Olav Hasholem. When he was in concentration camp in Buchenwald, the Nazis insisted that all men on arrival in the camp put their tefillin on a pile. My father had the courage to go up to the Gestapo and say to him, look, you have so many pairs of tefillin on the pile. Can't I keep mine? To which the officer unbelievably agreed. When my father arrived in South Africa during the war, he was told while looking for a job that it would be nearly impossible to find employment without working on Shabbos. He was steadfast in his belief and was uncompromising on this point. He insisted that this was not negotiable. And with God's help and his determination, he found a job without working on Shabbat, where as a bonus, he even learned to speak Yiddish, which was a foreign language for him when he started his job. Hanosen layoev koach, one who gives strength to the weary. Many of us don't appreciate the gift of sleep. We lie down tired at night and just expect to wake up refreshed the next morning. One of the side effects of COVID-19 is insomnia. Since awaking from my coma, I have experienced many sleepless nights. I came to the realization that refreshed morning strength is also a gift from heaven. Further on in the Amida prayer in Modim we say, Al chayenu hamisurim biyodecho, Val nishmasenu apkudos loch, Val nisecho shebechol yom imonu, Val niflosecho v'tovasecho shebechol eis, erev v'voker v'tzohoroyim. For our lives that are committed into your hands, and for your miracles, which are with us daily, and your wonders and favors are at all times, evening, morning, and afternoon. Another nice miracle which I have experienced was being able to swallow properly. When I was in ICU, I had a feeding tube through my nose and a ventilator in my throat to help me breathe. I was not allowed any oral intake. The only moisture I was given were wet cotton wool swabs. I was desperate for a cup of coffee, but this was refused, as my first swallowing capabilities had to be checked. This was a long, drawn-out affair, as in the beginning, I was only allowed clear fluids, then full fluids, then pureed food, and only a week later, normal foods. Swallowing is often taken for granted. For me, it was very special when I could eat again, although admittedly, at that stage, I had very little appetite. I lost approximately 20 kilos in ICU. I want to refer specifically to the words, V'al niflosecho, and for your wonders, that we say in the Shmona Esrei of the Amida. At various stages, unbeknown to Eli and I, we were very critical. Baruch Hashem, with the help of God, all the life-threatening infections and issues were addressed. One Shabbos, when I was already allowed solids, there was no rabbi to call as it was already Shabbat. I had a bottle of sealed grape juice in front of me next to 2 small chalot. I had no strength to twist open the grape juice bottle. At the same time, I had a call bell next to me. I later heard that I did right. I made kiddush over chalot, and the grape juice bottle was left intact, and I did not use the call bell. There are many more nisim, miracles that I experienced, but I would like to share one more with you. For the last 15 years or so, I managed to organize company funding for the various Jewish events at Canary Wharf. Usually, I invited employees working on the wharf and approximately 200 elderly to attend from about 10 homes or day centers. This year, to my great disappointing and disbelief, the funding for the Purim event was flatly refused. The only approval I received was to send Mishloach Monas packages to one center for Purim. With hindsight, imagine had the event gone ahead. Chas v'sholom, God forbid, many of the elderly could have become very ill. Unfortunately, I know various people in the UK who were not granted their request in last year's davening of Zochreinu L'chaim, remember us for life. It is a nace, it's a miracle that Eli and I were spared. Some people are still in rehab with major medical issues. My heart goes out to those orphans and widows. This year, I imagine we all had a different kavona, a different feeling when we said so many times from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, in Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, Menama Gefor Minachalosecho, withhold the plague from your midst. We all have a clearer understanding of what that means. Please continue with your Tehillim efforts, including all the other Cholim, sick people. We have openly witnessed what Koach HaTefillah, the prayer of power, has done. We find at the end of Devarim, Deuteronomy, that God said to Moshe, Be'etzem hayom hazeh, on that day, that he should go up to the mountain and die there. Rashi, a well-known commentator who lived just under 1,000 years ago, brings 3 places where Hashem specifically did something in the midst of the day to show that no one will be able to stop this from happening. And here, no one will be able to prevent the death of Moshe Rabbeinu. Harav Chaim Shmulevitz asks, did Hashem really have to show that no one could stop Moshe from davening? How could anyone have thought they could stop Hashem from taking away Moshe's soul from this world? Rashi continues in his explanation and says that the Jewish nation would have said that the man who put them through the Yam Suf, through the Dead Sea, the man who brought down the manna, brought up the well of Miriam, and gave us the Torah, such a person we would not let go and would not let him die. Rav Chaim explains that if the Jewish people would have recognized how much they needed Moshe and how instrumental he was for their physical and spiritual lives, with this immense and close kesher, the link to Moshe, they could have torn through the heavens and made a request that could not be refused, which would stop Moshe from dying. This strong bind to Moshe would have prevented his departure from this world. When we recognize how much we need each other and literally storm the heavens with prayers and ask rachamim, mercy from Hashem, this has unparalleled strength that can keep us alive. And in the koach hatefillah and the koach ha'achdus, the strength of prayer and the power of unity can mean so much. A few months ago, we said in Slichot, in the prayer of Shema Koleinu, hear our voices. We ask Hashem, Al tazveinu Hashem Elokeinu, Al tirchak mimenu. Don't leave us, God, and do not be far away from us. Let us hope that Hashem will have mercy on us and eradicate this terrible mageifa, the plague of COVID-19, very soon. A year ago, who would have thought that many people would be wearing masks in the shops, streets, and all over, and that traveling would be so difficult? Who would have believed that there would be lockdown in Israel over the Jewish festivals? The virus has caused absolute havoc around the world, and to my knowledge, not one country has been spared. I know someone whose children came from Israel and could not in the end spend Yom Tov with them due to social distancing regulations. He told his wife that he should look at things in proper perspective. At least they were sitting in the comfort of their own home. Think of both their respective parents with no clothes, medicines, or food to eat during the Holocaust period. After I woke up, I was shocked to hear that my original name of Yitzchak, the name Chaim, was added, i.e., my name is now Yitzchak ben Bela. I hope that God will grant us and me a long life, and I will be able to bring tzchok, laughter, and happiness to many people. Also, within 24 hours, sufficient money was raised for a Sefer Torah to be written as a merit for us, which will be available for use, not in a special shul, but for charitable purposes. I was in hospital over Pesach. I could not call the people I was intending to. Just before Shavuot, one of my sons phoned me and said that he and our other children had a Yom Tov present for me. They would call all the people I would have called before Yom Tov. I did not have a list in front of me and just tried to remember those who I felt should be called from the different continents, and that's what happened. Our children called from the various continents from different parts of the world. Due to COVID-19, many have been isolated for many, many months. If each one of you would just take upon yourself to call just one or two elderly or lonely people, this would make a huge difference. In the prayer of Nishmas, we say every Shabbat and Yom Tov morning, we mention Kol atzmasai tomarnu Hashem michamocho. My very bones talk for themselves and clearly demonstrate that there is no one like Hashem. I have often been asked how I managed during this very difficult period of my life. Thank God, the emunah in Hashem, the faith in God, and the fact that I had to pull through for my family enabled me to surf the challenging waves of life which I experienced. I just recently read an article by Rabbi Goldwicht called God's Number. It reads as follows: Rabbi, I have to share a story with you. You have to share it with all the people of the world. These were the words of an elderly man who came up to my father after one of his classes. I was in the Holocaust and they took away everything from me. He began, and then the worst came when I arrived in Auschwitz and they stripped away my basic human dignity and identity and gave me a number. I was no longer a person. I was just a number. As I lay in the barracks that first night, I didn't know what to do. I then looked down at the numbers on my arm and I started adding up the numerical value of the numbers, and I couldn't believe it. They added up to 26, the same Hebrew numerical value of God's name. I then realized that God is with me even in these darkest of times. Every time things got hard for me, I would look down at my arm and say, God, lift me up. This was the message of this elderly man. In life, almost everything can be taken away from us, besides one thing. We can lose our money, we can lose our jobs, we can lose our freedom to walk around in the streets, and the world can be topsy-turvy, upside down. Everything can be stripped away from us, besides our own choice of how we want to look at life. Will we look at it with despair, or will we find God on our arms and see that Hashem is truly taking us through these better times, and we will make it through the entire world? We are undergoing very difficult days. The whole world is undergoing very difficult days. But these are the moments when we look inward and choose to see Hashem's name and number in everything in our lives. Some people have said to me, we are fed up with COVID already. What does Hashem want from us? The answer, I think, is that Hashem wants us to learn something from everything that has been happening. Every night for 6 months, my family has arranged a conference hookup throughout the world. We had a speaker every night, followed up by Tehillim, Psalms. One night, the famous Rabbi Shimon Galai came from Israel, and he spoke for us. He said that the word corona in Chinese means a crown. He then explained that Hashem has sent the virus to show us that Hashem runs the world. It has been very clear throughout the past few months that no doctor or professor has control. It is only Hashem who wears the crown. Rabbi Shlomo Eiger explains that the reason we find it hard to live with God is because we actually cannot see him. If you would take some time to contemplate and appreciate his creation, we would be able to relate to him. I was walking in the park recently and marveled at the workings of God, just appreciating the different colored leaves and flowers. Although we can all testify that life has not been easy for us over the past many months, I hope that some of the thoughts I discussed will provide us with the encouragement we need to face the challenges of these turbulent times. Wishing you all good health and happiness now and in the future. Thank you.